First of all, I'm delighted to be here. I was here 2 years ago. This community has grown up tremendously in the last 2 years. And I was worried mostly about how to dress. What's the audience going to be like? Have you all seen the HBO series Silicon Valley? Anybody seen that? Yeah, you don't really like it. They really capture the entrepreneur, the hoodie and all that, but they don't capture the VC. So I thought I'd dress generic VC, Silicon Valley. Is anybody here from HBO? I'm auditioning. Okay. There's a lot of differences between what's going on in the U.S. and here in terms of the startup stage. I'll try to give you a perspective of what's going on in the startup stage. And perhaps you can change over, perhaps you don't need to. We look at UK deals. We've only done one so far, which is called FanDuel. Guys out of Betfair. And they're doing daily fantasy sports. They're crushing it. So thank you very much for sending them over. They're going to handle $1 billion of wages. I know that's only $500 million in pounds because of the way the dollar's going, but it's a fantastic story. And it's British DNA. All right, so I'm going to talk about what I call the post-seed landscape. There's been a ton of stuff written about the lean startup, minimum viable product, product market fit, how to get started. But when you're actually in the game of trying to raise money, most people hit obstacles before they get to whatever a big funding round looks like. I'm going to try to help you through that and explain what's going on in America. I hope some of this resonates with what's going on here. By the way, bullpen capital is a baseball phrase. I'm not going to explain it. I've tried to figure out a cricket analogy, I guess in the nets where the bowlers wait. That's what the bullpen is? Does that resonate? No. Okay. Let's just go to the story. Cross-cultural. They said no jokes. American humor won't work here. So, okay. First of all, the way to understand this is this interesting article in Wired magazine that's now a book. And I call it the hero's journey. It's a very typical story of some entrepreneurs trying to raise money. And when you read this story, you begin to realize that the reality is not what's in the books or the stories that you normally read. For example, did people understand that Twitter almost didn't get funded in its second round? The way the story's written, Twitter just took off and everything was nice and easy. No, they went to 20 VCs in Silicon Valley. They all said no, and their next round of money was from a Boston VC. So most of these companies, looking back, had a real struggle before they got their real money, and then they rewrite history. So I'm going to try to give you history from the beginning on, not looking back and cleaning it up. I call this a hero's journey because it's hard to go through this process. And what people suddenly realize is that seed is not an event. You don't just raise your seed and then you're done. No, it's a continuous process. A little bit here, a little bit there, you cobble it together to the point that the CEO is really got one job, raising money. We have people coming in saying, well, I'm coming to you to get some money so I can go back to coding. And we realize that person doesn't grok this period, doesn't understand what this period's all about. So the first thing to know is that hero's journey, when you talk to entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, are supposed to be the easiest place to raise money. It resonates with almost everybody. Now, why did this happen? Why did the world change? I say the world changed. I did 4 startups, and my period was you get a lot of fluffy money from friends and family, and then you go raise a Series A, a $5 million Series A. And you can see that there. That's like 99, 2000. That's gone in Silicon Valley. And the reason it's gone is the underlying technology has changed. Now, you probably all know this, but you got to think through the implication. When the technology changes, the funding and the financial system changes to match. And that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about. So what happened first is open source became prevalent. Instead of going to Oracle and trying to license something expensive in the database, you go MySQL, cheap. That dropped by an order of magnitude how much money it took to start a company. That's a huge drop. And then we had cloud, or renting from Amazon. Now you didn't have to buy a bunch of servers, you could just rent it. That dropped it another order of magnitude. 2 orders of magnitude. What people have to understand is that the lean process means you can get validation of both the business model and a product on cheap money before you scale up the company. It used to take, as a rule of thumb in Silicon Valley, something like $35 million, 20 million pounds, to get an enterprise software company validated. Now you can do it on certainly less than $5 million. It's a huge drop. Now, in order for this to work, the funding system and the legal system had to change. So let me take a little digression in some history. I don't know if you guys know some of this history, but every time there's been a boom or a bubble on the tech side, there's been some crazy reinvention of the financial instrument. Now, we probably remember recently there was a huge housing bubble all over the world. You guys are going through another version of it. And that was driven by something called a CDO, which made it really easy to offload and mortgage houses. Got out of control. You probably also still remember the dot-com bubble, where you could take eyeballs and buy Time Warner. I mean, people don't remember this. AOL bought Time Warner. Amazing, isn't it? It was a great time. I had two IPOs in the 90s. I must confess, I missed the bubble. It was great. I think I created 2 companies that are worth like $18 billion at the peak. Okay, it'll come back, I hope. But you may not remember some of the older ones. A moral obligation bond, I love this story. Does anybody here remember the name John Mitchell? John Mitchell, Watergate fame. John Mitchell? Okay, some of you guys do. He went to jail for Watergate. He was Attorney General for Richard Nixon. But you probably don't remember he got wealthy because he invented the moral obligation bond. He's a boring bond lawyer in New York City. And normally, New York City, to raise money, had to go get people to vote on taxes to pay for a bond. That's too hard. He told the guys in New York, you know, you're New York City. You could create a bond with the moral obligation to repay, and don't go to those voters. They're kind of ornery. And so New York City did it, and they issued these bonds, and people bought these bonds, and New York City went bankrupt. So point of this is, not that people are going to go to jail, but there's always a financial instrument that gets invented that matches the energy and enthusiasm of a boom. What happened here is something in Silicon Valley called the capped convert. And let me explain why. If it takes $5 million to start a company, you could spend $50,000. I'm sorry I'm using dollars, hope that's okay. You could spend $50,000 on lawyers to do a round. When it takes $500,000 to start a company, you don't want to give a lawyer 10% of your founding money. It's insane. So something had to be invented to make the cost of the legal thing drop to $5,000 or less. And that invention was the capped convert. Now, are we familiar with that at all here? Ooh, I guess I heard that tax policy drives you to do rounds.
Yes, it's generally there's very little convertibles here. Anyone got a convertible here? Mainly this.
There's one progressive in the audience. Okay, I like that. Well, let me explain a bit about the cap convert note. It's a note. It can be written on 3 pages. You sign the note, you get the money, you're done. It's that simple. In order to protect the investor, they put a cap on it. So if you lend money to the company, you might cap it at $4 million. It later converts to a round, but always at the value of $4 million. And this way, if the company goes wacko and there's some money in a $100 million valuation, you get the benefit of that. You're simply in at $5 million. It was an ingenious invention because it allowed the whole process to work on the cheap. We had the era of cheap in starting companies. Now we have the era of cheap in legal papering of a company. And so that has taken over in Silicon Valley. They can be stacked. You could raise some money at 4, and then maybe 6, and maybe 8, instead of a round. And you can stack it up as you believe you're creating value. I'm sure a lot of you hit this problem here, sort of an impedance match. Entrepreneur says, my company's worth 12 million pounds. The angel says, ha, 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 we'll give you a 2 million valuation. And you get an impedance match. Well, it turns out the cap convert kind of gets around that impedance match. It makes it easy for people to put money in it, really are inflated values, pushing the valuation problem off to a later stage when a professional VC comes in to price the company. But more fundamentally, they hope that the valuation increase in the company eventually matches the elevated expectations of the entrepreneur. So again, it's not quick just legally, it's quick in a negotiating sense. You can see a lot of stuff here. For the people that care about this, it's an amazing invention in that it privatizes the upside, meaning the investor gets the upside, but it socializes the downside, meaning if the company gets less than the valuation in the cap, the investor drops down to the lower price. So it actually has better protection for an investor, for you investors in this audience, than a regular round does. You're much better protected. And I think if you convert within the first 2 years, you might get the same tax benefit that is probably deterring you. So I can't change the legal system. I strongly encourage you to think about it. But what that did in Silicon Valley is that simplicity of that made seed a continuous process. Now, We now view the process to look something like this. There is a pre-seed stage, which I call fluffy money. Friends and family coming out of accelerator, small amount of money. Then there's the seed stage. There are a lot of funds that have been created to be seed round funders. The last time we get a lot of our deal flow from them. The last time we looked, we'd had deal flow from 96 institutional seed funds. We've counted 135, and that's excluding accelerators, incubators, super angels. It's a huge number. Some of the people, the LPs who invest in funds, tell me it's actually over 200 have at least tried to raise money. Now let me put that in perspective. In 2000, the number of fund managers of professional VC funds in the US was 1,000. Today, it's estimated fewer than 100 fund managers are still actively investing. We went from 1,000 to fewer than 100 are actively investing. There's a lot that still have a business, but they're not really raising capital. They're just sort of lingering off their portfolio. That is a huge drop at the Series A and after stage. On the other hand, in the last 5 years, it's gone from fewer than 20 of these to maybe as many as 200. And this completely changed the process. So, pre-seed fluffy money, and then you get the professional seed round, which is really the new A round. It's really the first round of institutional money. People in Silicon Valley, however, go to great steps to avoid calling it an A. They call it a double A, a series seed, anything but an A. Why? The professional venture guys in the Series A and beyond tell their limited partners, we do A rounds. All right. So the A round may be the fourth or fifth institutional funding, but it's the first one to get the letter A, so they can tell their LPs it's an A round. They're being gamified by the seed ecosystem. A bullpen came along when we realized that this environment was going to create a great influx of seed-funded companies. If it's easy to raise money, if it's cheap to raise money, if the financial instruments make it like falling off a log, it's easy, there's going to be a huge influx of these. And they're going to hit a wall with the number of VCs that are still doing serious A rounds. So we ended up doing post-seed, and it's a phrase somebody coined for us. It's also sometimes called mega seed. In the US, the fluffy round is normally less than $250,000. The institutional seed round had been running around $800,000 4 years ago, then around $1 million 2 years ago. Now it's running around $1.2 million. I won't translate that into pounds, but you could do that. The post-seed or mega seed round is running about 2.5 to 3. And so you end up getting around $5 million cumulative over 3 or 4 funding events before you go seek professional money. Now, why is this interesting? You're now trying to go for a supersized A round. You guys all go to McDonald's? Anybody go to McDonald's here? Big Macs, supersized drinks. That's America, baby. So, supersized A round. And if you were to do this from the entrepreneur's point of view, you tend to give maybe 20% through the first 3 rounds. So by the time you go for your A round, you've maintained half the company or more of ownership. If you got a supersized A of like $12 million on $30 million pre in dollars again, you're still going to own a big chunk of the company. And so the supersized A is really good for the entrepreneur. It's also really good for the Series A people. Remember, there's only 90 or 100 of them left that are worth anything. And what they love are de-risk deals. And they'd rather write a $15 million check than a $5 million check when all the risk has been drained out and they can just grow it to become a billion-dollar unicorn, whatever we call these things these days. Now, have you guys seen this chart, the Series A crunch? It may not have made it across the pond. It has. You might have seen this exact one. We did this a couple years ago anticipating this. So what this chart shows is the bottom line, I guess, didn't show up very well, but that really, really faded green line are the Series A guys. So I guess it matches Series A. The red line is the seed ecosystem. Now, most people show this data, how many seed deals were done in 2011 versus how many A rounds in 2011. Wrong. The seed guys raise money a year later. So they should be doing how many seed in 2011 versus how many A in 2012. If you follow me, that'll tell you the mismatch. So I just forward shifted the seed thing out a year. And this is what popped out. It was highly in alignment all the way into Q2 of 2011. Does anybody remember what happened in Q2 of 2011? Facebook went public and fell on its faceplant face. Okay? So that greatly slowed down the Series A guys, and they've somewhat flatlined ever since in their investing pace. But seed, remember, it's a year shifted. All the exuberant 2011 deals came forward. And so it became a huge mismatch, and that's part of what the bullpen thesis was. Now, in one of these weird ironies, my son is in the venture business. And so he did a chart, and this is his chart, so I'm using his chart. This chart is more recent data. I know it's hard to read, but that red line on the top, which he curve fits, is seed. The green line, which is hard to read underneath it, is Series A. And at the bottom are Series B and C. And you can see the huge gap that emerged, and then the seed rounding is sort of trending off a bit. And I asked him, I said, how'd you get your Series A numbers? Well, he included the mega seed post-seed round with the small A round in the same bucket. So if you take that out, actually the green line's very, very flat. And because the mega seed is part of the seed thing, it actually makes the seed thing still increase. Anyway, point of this is, you go out for funding, it's easy to get seed, it's very hard to get mega seed, it's extremely hard to get Series A. There still is a crunch. Now, I can tell you the mega seed is expanding rapidly. This is a chart showing how many mega seed rounds have been funded. You can see it expanding, and it kept on, it's going like this in 2014. All right, enough on all the financial stuff, the flim-flam, the numbers, the graphs. What does it mean to everybody? We end up thinking that people have 4 options. So, Bambi, you put up an old version of this. This is not the new one. Okay, I'm going to give you a 4th option. No offense, sorry. There are actually 4 options, not 3. This is the Oakland version. You guys get the more recent, modern version. So number 1, if you're not ready for an A, you want to bridge to an A round. Now, number 2, you may need to de-risk the deal. And number 3, if you're confident, so let's go through what these mean. If you're not ready for an A and you want to bridge, you're in deep trouble. Because people don't like to bridge companies. My experience is most bridges are piers. They go halfway out in the lake and then you fall in. The financial guys get the metaphor. Okay. The second option is you need to de-risk the deal. And the CEO comes in, I'd like to raise $4 or $5 million, got to de-risk the deal. Well, you should go to an A-round guy. You shouldn't go to this mega seed world. Why? The very attitude you want to de-risk a deal means you're worried. You probably don't really have product market fit. You probably really have a problem. And you want to raise a big round to overcome the problems you're trying to hide from people. If you're a star founder, you should do that anyway, because star founders can go out and raise a Series A. They don't need to muck around with the seed world. But if you're not, that's a very bad position to be in. The third option is if you're confident. Most of the guys come into us, and I'm sorry, a lot of them are guys. We see some women entrepreneurs, but it's still a lot of mates, dudes, whatever you say over in this country. What do you say? Mate? Dude?
Chaps.
A lot of chaps. I was down in Australia, they go, it's mates, dude. Okay, it's a chap. When they come in, we say to them, do you guys have a milestone in a year you can hit? And a milestone to achieve a 12, 15 million supersized A. If they're confident they can make it and show a plan they can make it, they can get this post-seed funding. They give up much less of the company. They maintain control of their destiny. For a lot of people, they don't yet know if they want to go become a billion-dollar company. They may want to sell quickly and pocket money fast. So they keep, I think the Vator folks have a word for this, which is what? You want to keep, this is the transitory period to maintain your resources or something? Ezra, I can talk about it later. Transition phase. So you keep an option either to go big or sell quickly and pocket money. We had an entrepreneur come in who had done 3 startups in the team. 2 in the 90s had raised $90 million, $100 million, had been sold for a big amount, and they did not pocket life-changing money. Because the preference stack was so high, they all went to the investors. So they took option B and they sold to Salesforce.com 9 months after we put this round together. And they had received very big supersized A bids from the VCs. But they pocketed life-changing money, and they're very good friends of ours. Other people in our portfolio want to go to become a unicorn. They're on the billion-dollar path, and they're trying to get there as fast as they can. All right, the 4th option that's not up there very quickly, if you're a hardware company, any hardware companies in the room? Hardware is the new software, I guess not. Bambi, good choice. No need to talk about the 4th option. If you guys are a hardware company and too shy, come to me later. So that's it, guys. Hope that was helpful to you. Thank you.
Okay, we've got to take a couple of questions. So let me see what we got up there. Duncan, are you going to stay up just to answer a few questions?
Oh, no. I'm hoping to get Steve.
Okay, we've got an anonymous one, and I'll take one from the floor. How much did the time to raise a seed round? How long does it take to get a seed round and a Series A round? What's the average time now?
The way to you got the question, how long does it take? The way to answer the question is, how long does it take you to get to product market fit? And we see a lot of companies coming to us that took as long as, say, 18 months, sometimes 2 years to get to product market fit. And the reason they get there is most of them pivot partway through. So I can't really generalize. I'll give you an example. There was a deal out of Mucker Labs in Los Angeles. Great name, Mucker Labs. And there were 4 college kids, all chaps, unfortunately, and they were doing a deal called InstaCanvas. And it sounds totally stupid. InstaCanvas was Instagram photo, canvas art. And in a flurry, they had pivoted. They had some other really incredibly dumb idea. It didn't go anywhere. So they quickly pivoted in 48 hours, and somebody wrote an upscaling algorithm for Instagram that upscaled brilliantly. 48-hour lucky upscaling. So you could print big canvas art, look great. If you ever see what a Instagram photo looks like blown up, it's completely awful. But they made it look good. So they launched. When they came to us, they showed incredible pickup. And so we funded them, and they were probably 6 to 7 months into the process. Okay? By the way, as that story played out, they ended up about a year later getting 250,000 Instagram photographers creating galleries to sell their photos. So you ask most people, what'd you do if you weren't a venture capitalist or something? Oh, I'd go around the world and take photos. So a lot of people believe they can make really good photos, and they're wrong. But these are the people who actually are committing their life to make their hobby into a business. It's like eBay did 15 years ago. They want to take their photo skills and sell them. So what's happened is they now have the largest mobile stock photo collection in the world. They're second only to Getty in total photos. And they're going to become the world's leading mobile stock photo company, which is potentially $1 billion exit for these guys. And it's 2 years on. So sometimes it happens fast.
Okay, I'm going to take one question from the floor. Anyone got a burning question? Quickly, quickly. Okay.
Your own activity in the UK versus the US, and quite what is or isn't interesting coming out of the UK at the moment?
That's a very hard question to answer. Betfair is great. Anything coming out of the betting world, you guys are world class in. But that's a rare, it's a small number of deals.
Very proud of that.
But you guys should be proud of that. I mean, in the gambling, oh my God, a vice. But in the U.S., state governments are strapped for money, so they're letting vices happen so they can tax it. Marijuana in Colorado and all that. But I think the 2 things you guys are world class in and probably don't really recognize, maybe you do. FinTech. You guys are really good in financial technology. Really good. Games. You guys are one of the game places around the world. Now, beyond that, I'm not sure. I've been hoping to see very interesting deals coming out of here. We saw Skimlinks come over, or a lot of sort of marketing, media, ad tech deals. But you're coming into a huge competitive battle in the U.S. of ad tech in New York and San Francisco. So actually, I'll put it back. Can I put it back? The question back to him.
Mm-hmm.
What should I be looking for here?
Well, William's a fintech, so he's going to say.
I actually am a fintech. Sorry, that's fluke.
This is a setup, of course, you know. It's like you guys realize the game tonight's already been played, and it's on tape delay, and you come up here later if you don't know who won, in case you want to place a bet.
Okay, then we're going to have to kind of
I'm
move on.
kidding.
Can we just say thank you for that, for Duncan? I thought that was very illuminating. And